Peggy said she's gonna be a few minutes late. But that was the, I want to send you this form.
Okay, yeah, if you,
Send that to you.
Yeah, I passed all that. The lower part. Oh, so it's pretty much.
What's that?
When it was coming up, the last meeting, there was just a bunch of cars, people parked.
do you, use the Wi-Fi?
I'm trying to.
No, I have, if you
Oh,
want.
this was SOS.
Do you want?
I don't know if there's just small talk going on, but you guys are muted. That's better.
Is that better?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got the form in here. Whenever you're ready, I'll just bring it up and I'll share my computer.
Okay.
You want to start off with that?
But when I call to order, while we wait for people,
Okay, so you got
and
some-
then we can do the minutes and pledge and get
Sure.
that done. All right.
Yep.
Call the meeting to order. You know. We did my flag here. We got a flag. There we go. I pledge allegiance
Pledge
to-
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Minutes for the last meeting. September 19th meeting. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Yeah, motion to, okay, thank you. Nick, any comments? I read through, I think they're fine. I think Rachel did a nice job with them. No. And, no, okay, with that, can I have a second to approve the minutes?
I'll second.
Thank you.
I wasn't here, so.
Oh, okay, thanks, Seth, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. I just wanted to give a quick update on the facility cost data information. So we have operating and capital costs now definitely for 22, 23 and 23, 24 for all these buildings, as well as for the town buildings for 21 and 22. So we have, right now, I think if I have it correctly, it's the Arts Barn, the campus gym, the town campus, the police department, the senior center, the highway garage, the ambulance garage, surf club, East Wharf, Strongfield, Memorial Town Hall, Daniel Hand High School, Polson Middle School, Brown Intermediate, Ryerson Jeffrey, and the Learning Center. So we have all that data now kind of assembled, all the operating costs. We do not have capital costs, so in the DRA report doesn't have capital costs for the Strongfield building nor for any of the schools. Which was odd. I mean, there was extensive discussion there for each of the schools, but they didn't put in the same kind of level of capital costs. So I've asked Peter to see if he can dig up where the capital costs are. I'm sure they are someplace in the system. And once we get those, then we can kind of fill out this table. I just,
Some question, capital versus operating.
basically what we're saying is whatever's come through the operating costs has been the dollars that have gone through the operating budget. And anything that the DR, and then I'm just adding to that the DRA capital.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
whatever they forecast as the next 5 years capital.
Yep.
So we take a 1 year snapshot of the operating cost per square foot plus the cost per square foot on the capital for the 5 year capital, and that kind of gives you a short term operating capital cost for that building.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
We could actually multiply the operating costs, average it and put it over 5 years and do it that way, but I don't think, I think this is fine. I mean, there are some, variances and we can go through that, but until we get all the data, I don't think it's worth really going into the details on it. The one thing that wasn't in on the list of town properties that you gave us at the outset, and it wasn't in the DRA report, was the learning center and what the square footage on those buildings are.
Oh, the town campus learning center?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, well, that's gonna be closed in a year, so.
I know, but it's still, it's useful, in order to compare it to other
Okay.
places. It's just like Ryerson, they're gonna be closed in a year, and
Yep.
Jeffrey, but it's, at least they're all, I assume it's probably 15 to 20,000 square feet.
Yeah,
Probably
that's
in
a
that
fair
range.
estimate.
But that would be good to put the number I have on my list was, I estimated at 20,000 square feet, and that may be high, it may be low.
Probably a little generous, yeah.
It's probably a little high, so, but nonetheless, and some of these operating costs per square foot or capital costs per square foot are skewed quite a bit because of the size of the building. So the thing on East Wharf, that's just the bathroom, so it gets totally skewed out of perspective. In the Strongfield, that gets skewed because you add the field lights to the building, and it kind of really skews it dramatically.
Strongfield picks up the other fields that are.
Yeah, so that's part of the thing. But nonetheless, we're starting to make some progress and assemble that piece. So, we're kind of, as last meeting we discussed, and we're kind of moving on multiple tracks. One track of getting the kind of the data profile components taken care of for operating capital costs and that kind of data detail, square footage, age, all that kind of stuff. And the other side is the more strategic view of the buildings. And so last month we reviewed a idea of how to do a strategic evaluation. And so maybe if you can bring up that form so that
Can I have a question?
Mhm.
Is it possible just to get a quick list of closures and closure dates? Because I'm hearing this is closing next year, this is closing next
Yeah,
year,
good
next year. And I really don't really know what all of the buildings are that are scheduled for closures and when.
okay, yeah, I think that's appropriate.
The last three.
Yeah, I knew.
The question as to when is,
Is the learning center. I remember hearing about the learning.
Learning center is on town campus. It's these buildings that are south of the playing field, and tennis courts there.
I think one way of looking at that is there are 3 school buildings that are slated to no longer be used for educational purposes. once the fall of 25 arrives and we transition to our new school configuration. So those three buildings will be offline for education as of, let's assume, at the latest, September 1st of 25. But the Board of Ed would still have to hold a vote to turn over any buildings that are used for educational purposes back to the town for the town to determine what to do with them next. So all three of those buildings will be under consideration for turning over to the town by the fall of 25.
So can you bring up that slide of the picture that you took of the strategic? So Seth, last month we went through a discussion on trying to say, how do we kind of rate a building? I mean, you had raised the whole issue of qualitative kind of judgments on buildings, and which I think was really appropriate a couple months ago. And so what we did was we broke it down into strategic issues, valuation issues, and then logistical issues. And based on the discussion last month, we really thought that the logistical issues are a secondary kind of issue. So under strategic, we thought we want to take a subcommittee of this group, and try to start going through buildings just as a group, and start identifying and rating buildings in terms of historical value. If there's a property adjacency, that's a kind of an important concept, I think, for strategically for the town. You want properties that are adjacent to one another. It creates opportunities to do things in the future. If it's a core function for the town, so obviously a school is a core function, a police department's a core function, town offices are core functions, so that those are high uses versus a storage building is not so much a core function, for example, or then community use. So obviously, like a surf club is a high community use function, as well as schools. And then anything that's highly utilized, try to say, is there a building? So for example, like the academy would have a high historical value, a high property adjacency value. Doesn't have much of a core function because it's not used and the utilization is very low, but yet there's a potential community use that's still high. So you start looking at it from that perspective, and at least you start putting things into some sort of context from which you start comparing properties to one another. Those strategic issues, I think, are very different than the valuation issues. So for example, valuation, does it have a high or low operating and capital costs, long-term capital costs? So, so for example, a building that may have a very excessive high long-term capital costs, it may be easier to replace that building and replace that structure than it is to repair it. So that's kind of the question. Is there an adaptive reuse potential for the building? Yes.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about strategic issues. Is it worth having some sort of category that talks about like a focus on demographics? Because, we have, schools are for kids, we have fields are for sports, senior centers for senior center. Not putting a value judgment on that, but is it worth adding some, like this building has a specific?
Well, that's where I
use
was
focus?
thinking the community use would be, maybe we can
Just having like
that,
a,
define it within that community
within
use.
the use,
Yeah, because
okay,
that's,
because that's very broad. That's what I was just thinking, do we want to have it like, concentrated?
we could do.
Or
we
what's the term, I guess, a specific, purpose or something.
So
like that.
more of a demographic purpose.
Demographic is this,
Yeah.
that's what you're really,
Yeah, just thinking, because,
who's the audience?
yeah. who- like,
Demographic focus, maybe.
specific, yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that came into my mind, which may be irrelevant, but under strategic, I was thinking also redundancy of use. Is there a redundancy amongst some of in terms of use, some of the properties that we have there? is building A and building B
Hmm.
actually doing the same thing? Whereas maybe the size of one could accommodate what another building
So
is
for example,
doing.
if two buildings have the same utilization,
Utilization.
or they have low utilization but redundant use, is there a consolidation opportunity?
And then you open up another opportunity.
And we will have a lot of buildings with redundant use, schools, obviously, right? And multiple
Well,
buildings
I-
have
but-
have meeting use.
I mean, I'm not sure
so-
they do, because if you look at the demographics, you can't use an elementary school to be a high school.
Well, I think it would be two elementary schools or,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but
So, and then the valuation things, obviously, we talked about costs, adaptive reuse potential. What's the potential tax benefit if the building or the property was to come out of the roles of the ownership of the town and go to the private sector? And where is the community benefit of that? So those are some of the questions. And then as I've thought about it, I think the logistical issues are really are only if you make it, my hope is that we can take, by looking at the first two categories, strategic and valuation, you can group buildings, what are the top 4, 5, 7 that have the highest value to the town, and what are the top 5 or 7 that have the lowest value to the town? And then when you look at the 7 or 10 low value buildings, then you go into the logistical issues that will help you prioritize within that classification. So you have one, a vacant piece of land, for example, may have versus a building, a building that is low value to the town, but it has a structure on it. And how do you think about that? It also came up if you actually tried to move functions, for example, one of the things that came out of last month's meeting was if you could free up space at the surf club if the maintenance functions were moved off the land of the surf club, and could they be consolidated somewhere else? So then it would have a stronger community benefit to expand the surf club potential spaces for playing and other types of things, but then where does that go? And what would be the cost of moving that, and what would be the cost of, and could it be consolidated with another property? Could it be consolidated on one of the properties that are being vacated, for example? Type of idea. So that, and then what would happen with the properties that are being vacated? So if we talk about, for example, the learning center, if that could that become a staging area for other functions, for example? But then there's a logistical and a structural cost of removing those buildings and building something else there. And so that's kind of the thought of as I was going through this and playing this out in my mind, how do you think through prioritizing the handful of spaces that we're ultimately going to identify? And I thought the logistical issues are probably going to be the best way to do that.
how do you address, I'm just trying to think, okay, I guess under valuation, you have adaptive reuse potential under valuation, but I guess is that also a strategic issue? I'm just thinking, like you brought up the TCLC. Okay, so could that be a daycare center? You know what I mean? Like, is it adaptive reuse of an existing building? And I'm thinking it impacts valuation, right? Is it gonna be a private person buying it versus their community value to having it? So I don't know. I was thinking, like, is it strategic or is it valuation? I mean, I guess we could leave it. I mean, I'm just trying to think about where it's best to kind of have those conversations, because I guess really any building can be turned into something else, right? I mean, ultimately, but some are easier than others, so.
Yes, that's
right,
that's what the potential, that's why the word potential is there,
Right,
so.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
But I think what I really like about this is that when you have these properties that are coming up available, is that you're looking at the whole picture, not specifically, what do we do with this property? This sounds like a really great idea. You actually look at the whole community, the whole portfolio, and you really analyze it to such a degree that as you drill down all of this, you really come up with a better idea of where the needs are, where the redundancies are, maybe it's better here and a better use, instead of addressing it on an as per case basis. This really will give you a good drill down on making informed decisions. And,
Well, because I think the opportunities for different properties aren't gonna be captured in here necessarily, right? Like, so, but trying to identify what we can.
where the needs are.
Yeah,
And I think we'll get a lot out of taking sort of this approach.
And my goal here is just to throw some ideas to
Yeah.
to the committee, so you guys can come up with better ways to approach this and try to identify this, how to work on it. So
well,
I'm trying to be
think
more
that-
catalytic here.
Yeah, and I think right now, this is really like. It's an inventory, right?
Right.
And trying to rank it, and then there's gonna be that next phase about what are the options, right? And so that's gonna have other things that wouldn't be on here necessarily, so that's a different process, but this helps you. Kind of vet things,
Yeah.
and.
That's a good
and
way of
value.
putting it.
Well,
I think,
but there's another question, if I might jump in. Toward what purpose is all this occurring? And one can see that we could sit here and look at some of the data we collect, and we can imagine different things we could do to consolidate, to creatively reuse, whatever. But then when you actually go to do them, and I think this is partly the logistics part, if you go to enact any of the thoughts we have, it's going to cost money. So then the question is, are people going to prefer the status quo to doing things to consolidate and to make things more streamlined or efficient from a building use perspective, when in fact it's going to cost money to get us there, to bridge us over to that different scenario. And then looking at, maybe we ought to look at, if we're talking about strategy and forward vision, at some point, doesn't it make sense to kind of take the pulse of the town and find out what use cases the town is looking for that we either don't already have, or ideas that townsfolk may have for how we can, creatively, rejigger how we're doing things. But we're kind of, if we don't have some kind of input from the town, it's almost like we're just in a vacuum here.
Well, I think we do have input through a couple different documents already. One is the strategic plan, right, that talks about what.
Yeah.
Wants, we also have the recent POCD, which guides us a little bit. And then one of the things we're going to start trying to do is develop more of a rating system for our CIP program. So that, the idea being we're putting dollars that are, more impactful, I guess, and more highly rated by the community. So that's like using all these tools, trying to rate like where we're investing in. So I think those are all things that we can look at, in terms of this, but I think the process of, we'll come up with some suggestions, but there's gonna have to be, especially if we're dealing with like a Jeffrey or something like that, that's gonna be a whole nother, really Board of Selectmen driven discussion, I think.
I think it was great to have Katie on this committee, because as a finance someone from the Board of Finance, they can drive how some of this stuff we're talking about, but maybe the smaller numbers can be financed over time. And there may be things that we're going to come up that are going to actually be revenue generators rather than cost creators. So there could be, I think there are both of those type things that are out there. And sometimes those things balance each other. And when you look at the long term, there may be a long-term payback for doing something in one way in order to generate revenue for the town in another. So, I think I agree. It's whatever we come up with as recommendations, obviously will have to be vetted in some sort of way through a community forum. But I think it's important for this committee and subgroups of this committee to deal with a lot of these specific issues to kind of triage this massive issue group of questions down to, it's the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time, you know? So, that's kind of where we're at,
Yeah.
I think. So, I mean, I think the next question is if we have a general framework here on this strategic evaluation, how is it best to start looking at the buildings that at least the buildings that we've already costed, and start applying these concepts to those just to see where it goes. I think if we had 2 or 3 people that would work on that as a group, I think that would be very helpful.
And I'm not supposed to be a part of that group, so.
I mean, I know John has sent me a note that he'd like to be part of a subcommittee group dealing with some of the other issues we're gonna talk about from the assessors database, but I think it'd be good, maybe Charmaine, you and Nick can kind of, the question is who from the town would be best to help them understand, because some of this may be going to see buildings, some of it may be, talking about what the functions are, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I'd be your conduit for that.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful to have conversations though with some other staff to get some of the historic, perspective perhaps. So maybe you work with that and then go with some staff members just to kind of get some more of like the context. So you may not be familiar with some of the buildings, how they're used, and so Peter could facilitate that.
Maybe we can strategize an approach.
Mhm.
And organize who do we go to for what, give them a heads up so they're not like surprised. Start swinging questions.
Well, and I think there's a couple of I would say senior leaders that you could probably have 2 or 3, like Austin or Sam, and they have some of the history behind things.
So they're aware they're coming, because I hate for them to assume, I'm wondering why we're being asked these questions.
Well, yeah, they don't know.
They don't know where of this
going
is.
now.
No.
Yeah,
We'll
so
have to
I think we have to be very careful.
Yeah, and I have I have a group called the Madison Operations Steering Team, which is kind of the senior leadership in town. Peter sits on that. And I'll talk about that at this group. They're familiar with this committee for sure, and I'll tee it up.
All right, so that's the end of old business. New business, you wanted to talk about custodial manpower use.
Yes, so, I wanted to make sure that there was a kind of an open discussion about how we use the custodians in school and in town. So we split these guys, for example, I'll use just a quick, easy example. At the high school where we have the most custodians, we often borrow from them all the time, and borrowing from them for several different reasons. There's at any given day, about 10% of the staff is out, whether it be vacations, sick, personal time, whatever. So we'll borrow from the high school to cover that base for any needed areas, whether it be for second shift or first shift coverage at a building. We also use that pool of workers to cover for the town. There are some people that are specifically stationed at town areas, and that's their only responsibility. And then what we'll do is to get the nighttime, because the nighttime is when we do the majority of the cleanups, where no one's in the building, and they prepare all buildings, town hall, youth and family services, the schools, obviously, for the next day. So there could be a shuffle, in essence, on any given day to arrange this so that we have, for example, one person that's at the town campus. That person then would maybe stop and go to youth and family services to dedicate 4 hours of cleanup time there. Then that person comes back to town campus and finishes their roles. They have the police department that they have to do. And then if one of those people is out at any time, we would then, of course, borrow, like I said, from the high school, because they have the most amount of people. if that happens at the high school, there's the shift of responsibilities that goes to any of the remaining crew to do what needs to be done. So it is a really interesting dance and organization
Intense management.
every day. So I mean, that's what we do to keep all these buildings. And if you see how these buildings, they are well kept.
Yeah.
And that dance occurs every day. I wanted you to have a kind of an understanding of what we do. Tom
So
Lifford is responsible for that. I oversee it. And then not to mention the fact, then there's the coverages that occur as a result of a meeting, something like this, or an event, or a basketball game. And then they have to manage that. And we've done tasks at time. For example, if they have a tournament, a basketball tournament, where you're gonna have 1,000 people at the Polson, at the Polson gym. So they know that that's gonna be a mess, and they have roughly a half an hour. So what they'll do is we'll pull in guys from all over the district to come in and hit that last half hour so that guys can get out in a timely fashion.
So it's interesting. So I think if I can repeat what you're saying.
Sure.
In order to, well, two big issues. One is that in each building, you probably have a prioritized list of what gets cleaned.
Yes.
First, second, third, fourth, fifth, down the line in terms of A requirements, B, bathrooms are highest and, the sanitary type of conditions, cafeterias and
Exactly.
and then it goes lower down to.
My office is at the bottom. Always clean.
And then I think that the second thing is on this is that if I hear you correctly, you're doing this to avoid creating a lot of overtime.
That's exactly correct.
Or hiring more people. Or
Hiring more people, right? We do, the guys have overtime on a pretty regular basis that they use specifically for emergency things. For example, just recently, the police department had a water fountain overflow. So that required us to go in on a Saturday or a Sunday. I can't remember which day it was, but anyway, it would be one of those days that we had to get a crew in there to clean up the water mess out of the road. So those are the kind of overtimes that we deal with on a regular basis. Now, also what we do is for Austin, we do help Austin out a lot, either at the senior center or at the surf club, because again, it's a heavy used area. They don't have the coverage that they can do to get these areas, spick and span and spotless and waxed floors and so on. So for example, twice a year at the senior center, we take a crew of 4 guys, ship them down to the senior center, and we'll dance amongst the operations of the senior center on a Saturday and a Sunday and completely wash, shampoo, and wax all their floors. So that's all our crew that does that. Now, that's on top of the regular person that has, I believe it's a 4-hour shift down there at night. There's just not enough time to do that. Where the schools, that's part of the custodial's expected duty. They don't have those duties over there because again, the use is not that high. There's not 700 kids in the building.
Are they
So-
on payroll or contract?
Oh, all the custodians are on payroll.
Because it was interesting, because in the cost data you gave us, the custodial costs are relatively consistent from one year to the next.
Yep.
Yeah.
They don't change.
They did.
I mean, there were a couple of them that were like almost identical.
Yeah.
Like the town campus, I think the custodial costs went from $87,081 in 22 to 89,089.
I mean, it's pretty steady.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty.
We have a,
So
I mean,
someone wants to
there's a really
really
good
do a
system
good
and,
job.
yeah, and so that, for example, the custodial supervisor, Tom Lifford, that is his sole responsibility every single morning is to arrange for the coverages of all the buildings in the town to make sure that we have enough guys in the buildings to get clean. And like I said, there's roughly 3.4 guys out every day.
I mean, some, obviously the demands are different, and like town hall is not as demanding, and it's not the traffic flow or the volume, it's mostly office space versus,
So look, it's really good, you guys, you bring that point up, I think. So we have the one guy at town hall, but then also he leaves town hall and goes to the town
Sure.
campus learning center. So he's on site, but at a different building.
Yeah.
And then at
Arts
the
barn
end of the
too.
night, yes, in the arts
Yeah,
barn,
which is-
at the end of the night, because the police department has a pretty heavy use, they gather for the last 2 hours and really hit that building hard and clean it up.
Are they paid under the same cost center, or do all these buildings
They're-
just absorb a percentage
No,
of it?
there's, these, so it's all, are the custodians paid under the same level? Yeah, so.
I mean,
based on
are
experience
they-
and-
is-
and-
Is it just one basket that they're paid out of?
yes,
Okay, so Paulson doesn't pay on their budget. but
it's
it's-
all
Under
under, it's all under custodial services and the payroll.
Although it's bifurcated between Board of Ed
I was
and
just
town.
gonna say that,
Yeah.
Seth, they do, town takes a percentage of it and the Board of Ed takes another percentage of it.
But I think it's a percentage, but it's not based on actual use. you know,
Exactly.
And I think there's times where we eat up more, because
Yep.
depending on what's happening versus, just the opposite, so.
Yeah, and there could be something like for,
Yeah.
But
whatever
there's
reason.
no adjustment for that,
No.
just
No.
straight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Board of Ed custodians don't just do Board of Ed buildings, right?
no, we expect every custodian to be able to do any building at any given time.
No union, right?
They're union, they're in the Teamsters, yeah.
It's a pretty efficient way of doing it, though.
It is efficient, but with
Yeah.
the Teamsters, you're limited too. You gotta be really careful.
We have a good
You have a
good-
good relationship. with them.
Yeah,
relationship
we
with,
haven't had a problem.
we've never, we don't have a lot of problems with that. I mean, we're fair. I
That's a
mean,
good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
So thank you for letting me, you wanna go over this?
Yeah, let's go through the next thing. Are there any other questions for Peter on that? Thank you for bringing that up.
So is it, he would like us, what do we,
I think it's just more information on how
Yeah,
they're.
I just, yeah, so when the questions come up, like, well, how do these different areas get balanced out?
Yeah, we
It's an understanding that it's a really kind of again, it's a fine
So
dance.
fluid.
because I
Yeah.
really would like to help you with it. That's pretty intense management
Yeah.
to be able to do that. Hats off to who's doing it.
Last meeting, we had a conversation about how to identify all the properties that are owned by the town. Another way other than just through the facilities and the budgeting process. And Peggy opened us up with the assessor. And Nicole has been incredibly helpful. I'm sorry, Marietta Nicola. She's been very helpful, and so she downloaded a database of properties, of everything that the town owns through the assessor's office. And I wanted to share, I kind of summarized it and cataloged it a little bit so that I could share it with you all, but I can also show you, the database, how it is on, it's called the Access AGIS. So you can go to the next slide. So just to give you a sense of what this looks like.
Oop, oh, sorry, I went too far.
Back.
There we go.
So the town, the assessor's office obviously maintains the database. There are 82 properties that are owned by separate distinct properties that have an address or have some sort of a ID code, if you will, a map and lot code. Those 82 properties total 1,207, almost 218 acres. Excluded in here right now, it's the library and the firehouses that are not owned specifically by the town of Madison. So it's a question of whether or not we include those in here or not, but they're not. Right now, the appraisal on all the properties, and that was based on the 2023 was the last year that it was appraised. It's going to be reappraised in January. The numbers for 24 will be out in January. She said she can update it, but it's just under.
This is the revale now, so it has a revale now.
Yeah, so this
So
is
this
two,
is
just under 200 million, $196 million is the value of is the appraisal value of all the town properties. And then based on the going through the properties, I was able to catalog by some kind of general use. I'll show you. I kind of, again, I'm trying to put it into big buckets so that we can get and drill into it in greater detail. and try to figure it out. And then this Access GIS system allows us to actually drill into each property, so you can type in the system, Town of Madison, and it gives you the following page. You just, if you go to the next page, it actually gives you the map. So every green dot is a property that's owned by the Town of Madison. And you can actually click on the dot and it'll take you to the card and the field card on every property that's there. So it's a very powerful tool. So what I did was I said, all right, well, just out of curiosity, what's it look like? So I broke it down. So if you go to the next slide. I kind of made big general categories. Anything that's attached to the beach or the shoreline.
Yeah.
Anything that seems to have sand on it from its location. So it was 3.8 acres, just under $5 million of assessment, just over $5 million. The bus garage, I really wasn't sure where to put that, so I kind of just left it on its own. It's 6.5 acres of land.
That's Nathan's Lane, the bus garage. We're not
It's-
talking about the public works garage, right?
That's different. The DPW is the public works
Yeah,
garage,
okay.
yeah. So there's a dock that's down by the surf club. I'm not sure if it's just that or maybe the other dock on on Middle Beach. I'm not sure if that's a town or not. I
The
think-
wharf or?
No,
Oh, so
That's
it's
place?
next to the beach club. There's that little,
Oh,
I don't think that is. I don't think
Yeah.
that, this dock is
Yeah.
at the surf club, I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
That's the one that's on the east or the western side.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, the far western side. The DPW is the town garage and there are some other miscellaneous things that were just really small. There were a whole bunch of things that wasn't sure how to catalog. The open space was the stuff. So, but what I did was I took anything that didn't have a building on it.
Mhm.
Cause and there's an assessment for the land and an assessment for the building. So if there's no assessment for a building, or a minimal assessment for a building, it fell into this open space. So 858 acres, almost 859. The largest piece of that is Rockland.
yeah, I was gonna say
Mhm.
that. would be
It's
the
like
biggest.
almost 600 of that. There's 8 acres of roads. So there's some little small roads and connecting spaces that are adjacent to roads that are out there. The surf club is 45 acres.
I'm sorry, for roads, does that exclude state roads and like I-95?
Correct.
So it's only our local town roads?
So the roads that are owned by the town of Madison.
Okay.
So they're not, we could drill into the specific ones, I can show you, but, 8 acres. The
No, it
surf,
just seems like a small amount to me, 8 acres. You know,
yeah,
8
it's
acres.
really small but these are little roads that are. I don't. Like Green Hill Road's not listed as a road that's owned by the town of Madison.
Oh, I see.
You see, I don't know,
Huh.
they must be considered like a right of ways, but there's
But
like,
then we changed
there's
it.
like a
Yeah,
thing
no,
called
we own, I mean.
Green Hill
it's a town.
Place.
So
Yeah.
we have a list of town roads, and it's like 130
mileage,
miles, I think, when they talk about roads we plow, 130 miles. So we can get that from the Public Works. He's got the list, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's accepted list of town roads.
I'm one of those, yeah.
But
And I know there are some roads that are privately owned by like a land.
Yeah.
Um,
And there are
Yeah,
quite
access
a lot
roads.
of that. I didn't realize like the assessor's office would have a road.
It's interesting.
In there, so
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Here, I'll just pull, I have the database here. I didn't
Yeah.
wanna, I figured that would be too much to just try to send out. So for example, there are 1, 2, many. There are only 7 roads that are listed in the assessor's database. So Longshore Lane, that goes down to the surf club,
Yeah.
or goes down, that connects on the back.
Okay, gosh, that's.
Orchard Park Road.
Hmm.
That's over by, I think the Orchard Park Road, isn't that right by, the car wash? just by the bridge
Gotcha.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sampson Rock Road is owned by the town.
yeah.
Because I think it's, the road is owned because the parking lot area is
Yeah.
a town property.
Yeah, okay.
So that's,
Parking, yep.
on Green Hill Road is Paper Mill Drive. And then there are two things on Woodsville Road.
Yeah, well.
And these
that's
are
a good point,
really
yeah.
small. I mean, we're talking, the largest of which is Orchard Park is 1.3 acres.
These
You
are
know,
okay.
I mean,
These are all access
these
roads.
are like access, you know,
Right.
Paper Mill Drive is 0.07, so it's a little corner that's
Yeah, yeah.
attached to a road kind
Yeah.
of thing, so these are.
So maybe it's a parcel attached to a road or something.
Yeah, I mean, we can actually, we can come back to that. Cause we may wanna come back to that and drill into
We
something.
have
That'd be
a-
interesting to
we have a
see.
road list,
Yeah,
that is our town
okay.
road, so I'll get
Yeah.
that.
Interesting to know what the criteria is.
Yeah, but then
Where
those
the assessor would have a
town roads,
parcel, Right,
Right.
number.
but those roads aren't included in the assessor's
Right,
statement.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Which is interesting. So surf club, town building, recreation were all the playing fields. So that's Salt Meadow,
Mhm.
that's Legends Field, all the kind of other kinds of fields that are out there. So that's how it kind of, I put some kind of big breakdowns. So then I said, well, let's look at the open space because that's the biggest thing. Where there's no buildings and no anything there. So if we go to the next slide. When I drilled into it, I looked and said, what are, I looked at it and I actually clicked on each property.
Very interesting.
So these are adjacent to, that doesn't make sense, the total open acres there, so adjacent to Bauer Farm, so adjacent to you have Bauer Farm and all the fields and the houses and the barns, but across the street is also owned by the town. So that 22.8 acres is the land across the street on Cox
Wow.
Road.
That auxiliary parking whenever they have the Bower Park Festival.
That's not Bauer Park.
Yeah,
Oh,
It's on the east side of the street.
yeah,
Not like Bauer Park and Bauer Farm and everything's on the Green Hill on the school side of the street.
where would, so Bauer Park? is
yes.
Other page, the rest of Bauer Park is under
Yes.
recreation. Okay,
Yes.
And so this 22.8 acres represents that adjacent across the street area where overflow parking is.
Open, there's nothing there. At least,
Okay,
I didn't realize it was that big.
yeah,
Lot.
I mean, that's what I was surprised
Yeah.
at. So,
Yeah. Must go into the woods.
adjacent to Brown School is 23 acres adjacent to the Brown.
So that's not the
Middle school.
Ryerson, but you're talking
No.
next and around.
There's
yeah.
all going up towards
Yeah,
High
there's like
Hill.
Trails and stuff in there. I didn't realize the town owned a lot of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
they own 23 acres.
Yeah,
There's 2 acres adjacent to the DPW. These are some small things, the smaller acres, against the bulky waste site. Not including where they actually store the bulky waste or the tower or anything else is another 50, it's almost 57 acres.
but this doesn't.
On Ridge
note if it-
Road.
This doesn't note if it's wetlands, obviously.
No,
So this
no,
is
I
just
don't,
literally- yeah,
it doesn't tell me.
Because a
whether-
lot of
it's
this
just
I would-
area.
is probably gonna be. but this is
Yeah,
just
it could be,
acres.
I have no idea what it is,
Like,
but
we don't know what is like real available.
Yeah. exactly.
Yeah.
And then on Horse Pond, that's the pond on
Yeah.
Horse Pond, so that's there's 5 acres adjacent to the pond, I think
That little
maybe the pond.
triangle.
You got the Jansen property that's adjacent to the high school. North of the
So-
train station,
Oh, wait, I'm a little confused. Jansen, 28 acres.
yeah.
That goes all the way back to that river.
Yeah, that's
Oh, you're talking about,
between the high school and Neck River Elementary.
oh,
Yeah.
that piece. Okay, I
Yeah.
was thinking
Those
the
are
other
back.
piece, the small portion in
No, that would
front,
be
that
considered under
Lesage, that was the
recreation, yeah.
Lesage property.
These are open spaces that are adjacent to other kinds of.
Right, well, we have that little plot, by the ball fields over here where the farmhouse is. Where would that fall? That has a building on it, so that.
Yeah,
would be-
so that would be listed
Okay.
as part of an address.
Okay.
So, I was interested though, if you go north of the train station, but south of 95 is almost 5 acres. That's owned by the town. Which is interesting,
Okay.
you know.
That's all wetlands, I bet.
I have no idea.
A lot of it, yeah.
The Pines obviously is that little triangular
Yeah.
piece. Rockland's a big piece that really needs greater evaluation because it's just huge. It's 647 acres. And, you know, and then there was 64 acres that were just blank, now the blanks are kind of one little pieces here and there. And if you go to the next slide, I drill into those blanks. That's 64 acres, which is kind of really fascinating. And this is. These are open spaces that are, oh, these are adjacent, these are the ones that are adjacent to town property. So, okay, so that's is what,
The next one.
yeah, so you really want to go to the next slide. I kind of went through this as part of it. That was the address. So these are those 64 acres that were blank on the open space.
Hmm.
They're basically half acre, 1 to 2 acres or 3 acres of lots that are just right in the middle of residential sections. So for example, there's on the corner of Wildcat and Randy Drive is a acre drive. It's 1.3 acres. It's right on the corner of, you know, that's owned by the town. You know, so it was really interesting. Kachino Way, there's those, you know, High Hill Circle is a half an acre, you know. Since you cut on County Road, there's 2
Two after areas.
Yeah, there's some of these are really nice spots. I mean, Rolling Meadow is 2.1 acres, and you know,
So I'm just
and
wondering.
I don't
like,
know if it's.
I'm just curious, it's like any time that there was what does the town consider as like a development, more than 2 lots?
Yeah, I don't know, yeah, I'm not sure.
So at any
but
given
but
time
you're
when
gonna have to have
when they
open
do that,
space,
yeah, they have to have open space, and
Yeah,
I
some
think
of
that's
it
where
might
a
be
lot of
like
this stuff
this,
is
yeah.
tied into
It's
it.
usually.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the regulations have changed a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You know, because this was probably stuff that was defined under 3 acre zoning
yeah,
when and all of a sudden, you know, if you look at 64 acres, even if 20 acres of it became available that could be released.
I don't think that's.
20
what
acre-
that Deeded land.
no, you don't think so?
No,
But
because
so-
I know several properties, mine being one, my road's not on here, and we
So-
have several acres.
For example, if you can go to, I mean, pick one that you want to look at, and I'll show you.
White
what it
Cedar
looks like.
Drive.
Okay, if you go to, go online and open up, the
The
town's
GIS.
website.
Wood Cedar is the one that has all the Eversource lines behind it, I think. So it could
Wood
be,
Cedar
some of this is, I mean, we'd have to go into the deeds, I think, for each of the properties, there might be easement, or, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I know White Cedar had the big transmission lines, you know, where they've done all the tree removal, so that's why I know it so well. So, there are easements, you know, the town has easements.
way here.
But that would come up under that would be a parcel,
And some of those might be wetlands as well.
yeah,
Yeah, because the town doesn't own an easement, it just has a right to use an easement,
yeah.
right?
These are
Well,
parcels.
these are
though.
parcels that
These
the
are
town
parcels.
actually owns.
Yeah,
You want to go to the GIS site?
Yeah, so if you go to town departments and go to the assessor's office. Just scroll down to the assessor, okay? And you go down to access AGIS, they're the 4th one down on the left,
Gotcha.
click on that. This is pretty cool, so I agree. I mean, this is an amazing, powerful tool.
we just.
You go under find property.
Here.
Let's say find property.
Yep.
So under find property, do 146-14. And now scroll down and click on it. Now click on that property. Now it shows you 14 is there. If you go over to the right a little bit, if you scroll that over, 15 is also part of it, and then 22. So
15 and 22.
15 is, I guess it's not all, they're not adjacent to each other. I thought 14 and 15 would be adjacent to each other. Oh, maybe it's that one,
If you go- if you
down,
go down,
maybe the one down low. So 14 is 2 acres. And then you can click on the picture and you can see, now, if you go to the right where the 3 lines are, up on the little tab.
Yes,
Click on that and you can go to the,
The hamburger.
You can,
you're
you
gonna have to
can
move,
also overlay as well, if you move
Yeah,
the
there's
zoom thing out of the way.
you move the zoom thing, slide that over.
They're all every GIS is a little bit different, but some you can overlay
I
wetlands.
think it's area, no, up above,
Texture layers on this. I
it's
don't use a lot, but I've seen people do that.
base map, click on
Base
base
map.
map. And now you can go to an aerial view, so that imagery high, I think that number one, the
Yeah,
very
you
first
can have
one,
okay.
now it shows you what that is.
This is cool.
You know, so, so you can get an aerial view. So we can actually pick these properties and go and say, what is it? And look at it and say, you know, is it something that something can be done with? So when we were talking, this goes back to your question, Seth, if something else costs money, maybe this is something that raises money. You know, because if all of a sudden, if that 2 acres became a buildable lot, that could, you could be worth $150,000, $200,000 to the town, plus the tax revenue on of the future. So all of a sudden it could be, so if you start going through this, it's pretty fascinating.
I'm just curious, what's to the left of that? Can you scroll over?
So if you go, if you go here to the over to the left, there's it says
That bigger, the next, what's that?
it might be,
Click on that, the
I got
other.
it.
you click
to
on
see
that.
the lines.
14219.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
attached to the water company.
Yeah,
But
so it might be
if you go,
something there.
if you go up above, under the number there, and you see the group of little houses,
Yes.
the second icon,
yeah,
click on that and it tells you all the abutters.
Oh, okay.
And now you can click on and it'll tell you each of the property you click on, it'll tell you can adjust it for how far out it goes.
If you click those 3 lines again on the top right. And then click the,
Nope.
Do you think there are any carrying?
Base-
costs?
Base map,
and you've got the
and
Madison
then
Land.
others.
Land Trust above.
See the tab there. Try
Yeah, it is, this is.
What do you
a
wanna
great
do?
Try
exercise,
local.
'cause
I just want to see if
it's- I mean,
this had.
Local.
A lot of it will be.
yeah, a lot of it is gonna
But
be,
there
there's
might
gonna be
a few little
rationale. for
Gems
it,
in
but-
there that, you
Yeah.
know.
It has the FEMA stuff in there.
Yeah, as it also has
Associated with all
topo,
of
so you
these
can
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
get a pretty good idea if it's well or
I
not.
mean, probably not, but,
Tax.
I mean, you go to elevation maybe, or.
we don't pay ourselves taxes, we don't insure it.
No, okay,
But,
so there's definitely.
there's some
opportunity.
maintenance
Right.
issues, like I know we've been dealing with some other areas that we have like, maintenance issues because of overgrowth and stuff like that, but
That sounds nominal with that.
So yeah, you can see where the road is. See that property goes, it attaches right to the street.
I mean, that could be some sort of access for, but I don't know, we'll have to look at it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had no idea what that, I didn't,
Yeah,
that was one I
yeah, you
didn't
just picked it as
drive
example,
and you
right.
picked it out, Peter.
Yeah.
I didn't even look at
Yeah.
that. But for example, if you go to the one on Randy Drive, which I thought was fascinating,
What's that number?
I'll tell you.
I know they have underground electric, I believe on Randy Drive. They have like those green electric boxes. So I wonder if there's not a substation on it or something.
That's. Thinking, let's see, what was the transmission line? It doesn't look like.
No, this is a
Something
fascinating one.
else, white birch.
7320,
like drove all throughout the
Page
transmission. line.
73, I'm sorry, 7362,
Fun.
73-62.
I did a lot of walks with the neighbors and other owners when they were, clear cutting.
Yeah.
I mean, basically it was
Okay.
nothing we could do about it, but,
That's one of them on Randy Drive.
that's interesting.
All
I
right,
wonder
and
what's
then the
behind
other
it.
one is 73-25. That's the one on
Right in the
Stacy
corner.
Lane and right in the corner. That's
Half acre.
That's got the.
Oh, that's the brook on it.
Yeah,
If you go back to the one you were just on.
So it's 73,
60.
62. Yeah,
And then you see where it says 12-16? You click just toward the bottom right.
just click on that.
Oh, right here, yeah.
access to
Click on that
whatever
one.
that is, what is that?
Land
Yeah.
conservation.
Yep.
So that's the. And that's not part of this.
No,
That's
no,
for
because
the-
it's not owned by.
That's over the land trust.
But nonetheless, so, I mean, I found this to be, as a data nerd, I found this to be incredibly fascinating to play with this database. And,
Well,
and I thought it'd be useful to, I mean, John volunteered to be part of that. I thought we'd break it down to another subcommittee. So maybe I'll work with John on that, and I don't know if Peggy, you want to work on anything like this, or is this a conflict with you? to be Part of this
These are all put aside for.
to kind of.
yeah, I mean, I know, I think this is really fascinating, because we've been talking about all these different types of things, town
Or
properties.
Seth, if you want to be part of this, I mean, you basically, you just got to kind of go through the properties one at a time, click on it and find out what's going on with it, and.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good exercise to get the staff, like with Aaron.
Mhm.
And we'll just kind of go through it, because some of it will be like, okay, that's, related to this development, or this is, something not conforming lot that was turned over to the town, or, that kind of thing. So she would provide a lot of insight, I think.
And some of them may have been taxes that,
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
defaulted on the taxes.
Well, we've
and the
had some of
town took
those,
it,
yeah, we've had a few of those,
And
yeah.
then that's,
yeah,
happened, but this one doesn't, this looks certainly looks.
I mean,
Well,
it'll
it's
be
like-
labor intensive to
That
go
looks like
through
it's
these.
less than, is it probably 1 acre zoning up there?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
0.79
Yeah.
acres, yeah.
But to build a house out there, it would,
Yeah, you get 9-7, yeah, it could be,
it,
like
I think
to
it'd
the
be
non,
low,
to
yeah.
the point about non-conforming.
But at the same token, maybe the butter is one of the neighbors wants it.
True. Add to
Yeah.
the property,
You
yeah.
know, and you could
That's-
expand, you
yeah.
could double your, you
Split
can
it
add,
up,
you
yeah.
can add to your property by a third.
Or the land
Put a
trust
pool in.
point,
Yeah.
that could be an access point for the property
That's a good
they own,
point, yeah.
the 2.5 acres below.
Not a lot of access to the woods, but we walk to it.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a reasonable way of going through it. Obviously, there's other things to go through, some of the kind of core list. But it's a very powerful tool. And honestly, I was surprised by the number of properties,
Yeah.
the number of parcels that are just where there's no buildings on it and that are still owned by the town.
Mhm.
I mean, it's significant, obviously. And,
Question, when you were talking to, I just was thinking this through, because we have, our finance department has to do an annual report, right? And it has to have a list of, I wonder if they use the assessor list for that. I was gonna ask Stacy about that, like, how do they, how do they have that record for the auditors? What does the auditor look at for our assets, for our land assets? And is there a,
well, I mean,
yeah, I'm gonna talk to her about that. I'm just curious if she has the assessor do a run. How do they value it versus this is obviously, market based with the, vision
This
appraisal,
is
but,
exactly where it gets sticky, where if there's an initiative to start putting sidewalks around town, you have the DPW hopscotching all over the town of Madison because they would be responsible
possible
for
for
that,
that, yeah,
of that road.
yeah,
And 64 acres,
yeah,
that's a long day for someone.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I think my suggestion is that we kind of triage this down to, I mean, a lot of the properties, but I mean, there's probably a good 30 or 40 properties that really need to be drilled into, that you understand and get a write-up on what's going on with each of these properties and what is the potential. And it's kind of a little bit different than I think it's part of the charge of this committee, even though it's a little bit different, because I think we were really originally focusing only on the building side of it. But when you start
This is
looking
an
at,
interesting, but this is an interesting find
yeah,
as a result. I mean, there's gotta be, I mean, I agree that there's a lot of questions that have to be answered on what are all these properties? You could see the 1/10 of an acre, this could be left
Yeah,
over,
that's
so that's
not-
nothing,
that's
but when
not
you have,
talking about
1,
that.
2, 5.
Well, it's a level
know.
of awareness.
Yeah.
I'm sure,
On residential streets that are.
I'm
Yeah.
sure this has not been done for a
For
very,
people
very
looking for
long
land.
time to this degree.
well, I look at the date on that, so 94, wasn't that
Yeah.
around the time they were building it, so there was something.
Yeah.
When the development was approved, they had to have an open space, and that was how it was done, but.
So there's
Um,
added benefit to this whole exercise. I mean,
Well, then to your point, Peggy, down below 1216, which is a land trust. Why wouldn't they take it?
Yeah,
Now you've got an
Yeah.
access right to it. 'Cause I don't know if that's landlocked or not, but
and I don't know what that, land trust, I mean, they have properties with trails and then they
Mhm.
have just space.
so just go to one more, because this is fascinating, because this is an example of something I think that it's 38-113.
Well, the land trust might not buy a parcel, even if it's adjacent to a land trust property, if they figure it's not really developable anyway, because it's not, it's zoned an acre minimum, and it's only 2/3 of an acre or something. So they
So-
figure it's gonna be open regardless.
Right,
So
well,
this is on Meg's Ave, so this is,
right behind
Adjacent.
the service center, yeah.
yeah, so, but it's all wetlands, and it's that little, I think it's where the stream from Tuxas Pond comes through, that goes over to behind Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
In that area, it's 0.26 acres, so this is one of those little things that you go through. There's another one on Horse Pond. That's just this little sliver corner. It's, let's see.
I know it will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see if I can find it. 67-83. So you see that little orange piece, bigger,
Yeah.
that's also owned by the town, that little
Yeah. that will-
triangular piece, so
Yeah.
you see, you get the big piece, that's Horse Pond, but then the 67-82, that's also owned by the town. But it's a
Oh, that
separate,
little spot,
it's
yeah.
just a little,
Yeah.
so some of these are just adjacent properties that are just, that's why I said if it's an adjacent property, I wanted to see what it's for.
Right,
But like, for example, the Ridge Road is an interesting one. They've got 50 some odd acres in Ridge Road.
Right.
Yeah, I can't believe all of them are wetlands and all of them are not.
Oh, you mow it or the town
The
does?
Austin does, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The town mows that triangle,
do they really?
yeah, cause it,
Take
well,
them
it's,
to the park and give them equipment off the truck.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's
it's-
actually quite a little, but I think it used to be used when people would skate, but now.
Oh,
we
they
have
rest, yeah.
Skating, and so now it's just a big, people walk their dogs and stuff, it's just like a little.
It's just but I mean, that's the thing, but then the other one is, I guess it's on, I think it maybe the address, but 87-82. It's that little triangle, it's like 0.07 acres or something like that, it's that one right there.
Yeah, no, that's.
See, the town of Madison owns that as well. And it's just this little piece of corner that's just is adjacent to the thing, so there's a lot of little things like that you see in there as well. And it's just, I don't know, maybe to clean it up, you merge the deeds between the two properties just to make it easier, because they should be one or something like that, but anyway, it's not important. But there's a handful. going. For instance,
6782.
on Green Hill Place, there's a little extension. There's I think on Kachino Way, there's a road, and then there's like a space that's an access between Kachino Way Circle and the next road. And it's just it's just a little lot that would be a connector if you ever wanted to connect the circle to the road.
Wait, Kachina Way, that's up off of Opening Hill, right?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
where the
you know, I
Green
mean,
Foundation,
so anyway,
maybe it connects.
all right, so if John and I and you and maybe we can organize something with Aaron and we can kind of
Yeah,
set aside a couple hours just to kind of click through this stuff.
yeah.
To see what makes sense. That would be good. Okay, any other questions about this? This is just kind of a fun way to do it.
Is that sharing?
Yeah, just go back to the meeting.
So when you got the data from, Orietta, did she give you like an Excel sheet?
Yeah, she downloaded
Yeah,
it
she
to
was
Excel.
able to-
Yeah,
that's
here,
what-
this is,
Yeah, I talked to her and she said that she could do all that. She needed to know the fields.
yeah, so this is the database.
Yeah.
So it's just it's 82 lines of an Excel
Yeah.
spreadsheet and every property is listed and what I did was I just,
Does it break out land versus,
yeah, I broke
Yeah,
out the land
okay.
acres,
Yeah.
whether the land assessment,
Yeah.
the building assessment, as well as I broke out the
Yeah.
appraisal.
What's it show for, J.C. Field and the VFW? We own the VFW,
I don't.
land, I
Yes.
think, and
But the J.C. Fields is that's on
it's on Scotland.
Scotland.
But there's J.C. Field and then the VFW is behind it, and my understanding is we
I don't
have
think we own
leased
the-
the property to the VFW, but the parking lot is ours to use as we see fit.
J.C. Field.
I was just curious. what-
87 Scott.
Could there be any land leases or you've got land?
Because I did not see the
That's a land lease,
VFW.
actually.
That's a land-
Yeah, to VFW, that got renewed, I think the year before I came into office for another 30 years. So,
What got renewed?
the land lease for the VFW.
Are there others like?
I don't know of any, I think that was kind of.
6.5 acres, so they may have included,
So that shows the whole parcel including the VFW on it, or?
it may, I don't,
Okay.
You don't know.
let's see. I'm not online here, so I can't get online
Okay.
because the school locks me out here, but it's,
We have no guess.
I thought-
there's
I
no
thought-
building on that property though.
It's the only school we don't have a guess why.
Why?
I don't know.
Cause I know they added it at Brown.
Yeah, they
All
don't.
right, I'll have to ask Art, cause I've been beating that drum for a long time to get
Yeah,
the guess why.
This is the field, but there's no building on that property. It's 6.5 acres.
So that is just the field, so it must be a separate parcel for where the VFW is and then the parking lot.
Unless it's, so what's the street that the VFW be on?
Lovers Lane,
Lover's Lane.
I don't know the address,
Well, if it's owned by the town, I'd be able to,
I mean, I can get the address.
because there isn't anything on Lover's Lane.
Oh, well, I mean, this could be talked about, I'm just curious. 'Cause we
See,
were
Lover's
talking
Lane is
about-
not, there's nothing on Lover's Lane that is owned by the town.
I know we have a land lease, so, and I was a little unclear, I gotta go back and look at it, but we definitely own the,
Well, not according to the assessor.
yeah.
Don't tell the VFW people who are paying us for the lease.
Exactly.
I know.
I
Because
mean,
they want us to fix the parking lot, so.
yeah, all right, so I'll get John and myself to contact you so we can set something up.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All right, is there any other comments or questions or any other info that, on this? Oh, okay, any public comments?
Raquel, is there anybody online?
No,
Okay. Then,
They're missing out.
Are we posting this as hybrid?
Yes.
yes,
Oh, we are,
Yeah.
okay,
yeah,
okay.
all right, so can I have a motion for adjournment then?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, thank you all very much.